Everybody, to the Coach's Corner podcast presented to you by Team Rabadi. I am your host today, Nabil Rabadi. With us in your corner today is Coach Brandon Lara and Coach Robbie Rabadi.
Yes, sir.
Thank you again, guys, for joining the podcast. Before we start, I just want to let everybody know the intention of this podcast. The Coach's Corner is just an extension of the Team Rabadi Academy, where we're having discussions that are related to your martial arts journey, the fight game, mindset. It's for veteran and casual listeners alike, veteran students and casual listeners alike. And it just offers a greater insight to training and the path that lies ahead. Now, before we start our podcast today, we want to give a special thanks to a few of our sponsors.
We got sponsored, baby.
Snap, Crackle, and Pop, guys. Not a cereal brand, unfortunately. We're waiting for that. We want that Wheaties money, baby. But we first want to thank Restore Cryotherapy here in Round Rock. And for those who don't know, man, they are awesome for any kind of recovery need with cryotherapy, drip therapy, compression bags. I'll tell you right now, you go into that icy prison for about 2 minutes at negative...
3 minutes.
3 minutes? Oh, no, I can only do 2 minutes. My shins start cracking, man. At what, like negative 200 degrees is what it is?
Negative 260 degrees.
It's
cold.
It is a polar ice cap. Yeah. But you walk out of there feeling amazing.
Feel like Superman.
Dude, absolutely. The drip therapy is great. Compression therapy. I love it so much. And when you guys go there, feel free to ask about the Team Rabadi discount. I encourage it. I encourage it. We're not perfect here, except me, actually. I am perfect. Next, we want to thank Body Tracks Chiropractic in Pflugerville. It's chiropractic help by a chiropractor that actually cares. They're wonderful. Robbie goes there all the time.
Coach Brandon goes there as well.
Coach Brandon goes there as well. Many of the people here at Team Rabadi go there. I do need to go there. I feel like an old man at 31. 31 going on 70. And lastly, I want to thank Robles Kimonos. Basically, they offer amazing custom gear for training, gis, any kind of equipment. It's for all the academy owners. Can't help but recommend it to bring that brand to the next level. So, in thanking my sponsors today,
yes,
our sponsors today, I should say. I apologize, I'm selfish. I just want to ask you, gentlemen, how you guys are doing today. Brandon, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good, Nabil.
Just pretty good?
Yeah, how are you doing?
Dude, Thanksgiving week, bro. Like about half a week. Dude, I'm still full of turkey. Coach Robbie, how about yourself?
Doing great, getting that good recovery in.
Yeah.
And excited to be on our episode 2.
Right, and the main...
Attack of the...
Nibbles.
Pods.
Oh, okay.
Nibbles might be better.
And listen, Coach Robbie doesn't know that I'm about to ask this, but he has this yearly tradition that he just loves. And he does it day after Thanksgiving. And I got to ask you, man, explain to people how your grandpappy sandwich was, and what a grandpappy sandwich is.
So let me describe it first. So grandpappy sandwich, or sometimes called the smashwich, is basically as much of your...
That's too millennial. I don't like that. That seems offensive almost.
Really?
Don't call it a smash witch.
Really? That's kind of like how I grew up knowing it.
Oh, man.
Like 30 years ago.
Nice.
A friend who started doing stuff like that. But a normal tradition for almost everyone is to have the leftover turkey sandwich the next day. And normally to add a single, maybe some other ingredient in there, maybe some cranberry sauce instead of your conventional condiments. And so I had a friend somewhere down the road who would start adding some different stuff. And so it just evolved and morphed into this Frankenstein of a project every year at the day after Thanksgiving. And so, yeah.
Can we get an example of what goes into a grandpappy sandwich just real quickly?
So,
And I feel like this ties into heavily to our subject today.
yes, yeah. So let's just take what I did this week. It was, obviously on a sandwich. I'm preferential to mustard. So mustard on one side, homemade cranberry sauce on the other side. Then we had that honey baked ham on one side, that roasted beautiful turkey that we had as well on the other side, and then you started kind of getting exotic with it, adding sweet potatoes, mac and cheese.
Tamales.
That was the secret
That was the secret
ingredient.
ingredient,
Tamale, roasted onions, a little bit of gratitude. You got to mix that in there, and I think that's it mostly. Oh, the sage rosemary gravy.
So yeah, it's a
it
yearly
was-
tradition that Robbie does.
Yeah.
Next year we want to see you guys and what you guys come up with, which again rolls into our subject: how to develop self-confidence. Because clearly you gotta have some.
That was a great segue.
What a transition!
To
What
jump into
a
this area.
transition.
Thank you. The first, I want to ask Coach Robbie, why is self-confidence important?
I feel like whatever your goals are, martial arts or anything, that the main driving force behind it is mostly your passion and your discipline towards that, and how hard you work on it. And especially, we kind of covered a little of that in the last podcast. But the fuel for that vehicle of passion, discipline, whatever it is, getting there is your confidence, your belief in what you're doing, and how much you both believe in yourself and your work, what it is that you're actually producing and putting out there. So to me, self-confidence is all about that. Like, how am I feeling towards it? And then how am I also keeping that gas tank always full, always viable to continue driving forward?
Awesome. So, with that being said, how do you develop self-confidence? Where does that start? Is it just by, oh man, I'm tapping dudes out left and right. I'm so amazing. Because I personally I am. But how do you develop that?
So obviously, I'm gonna only speak from like my perspective and how I developed it. But I think there's also a pretty universal thing behind how I feel it's developed, and it's really developed through experience and the value inside of how much and how good that experience is. That's on you. I mean, how to get it, but it's really about over and over getting experience the hard way. And the more of it that you do, the more confidence that is naturally built. Well, I've been through this before, so I know not to feel shaky about this moment. And sometimes it's different. Sometimes it's that really tight, tough guillotine choke that you're stuck in, and you've never been in it this deep, but you still feel something that says, I can get out of this. I'm not done. And it's based on 500 times earlier where you were in a similar position, similar situation, that you really didn't get yourself rattled and shaken, that confidence was allowed to build and grow and have a great feel for what you're capable of.
So I think there's a fine line here when we talk about this. Ego versus confidence. Well, kind of what's the difference? And I mean, how does one differentiate it?
Yeah. For me, that is I know that they're so close, and it's from the outside. A lot of times, it's hard to differentiate and see, especially in someone, and really pick up on or see what you perceive. But for me, the definition of it is super easy. And I tell this to a lot of my fighters, and I've told to many of my students for years, is that the difference between confidence and ego is this. Ego is from the top down. Confidence is from the bottom up. And it's quite literally that simple in my mind, that confidence is built through experience, a strong personal foundation, in our situation, a strong physical situation that you're constantly building on. You're constantly trying to sharpen your body. You're constantly trying to sharpen your mind, your spirit, your heart, even towards it. That it's built on concrete things, like the way you would build a home on a powerful foundation that cannot be taken away. It's so strong that whether you are to do train martial arts and go into podcasting, that you would feel that same confidence throughout, because you're like, well, my experience, my life has allowed me to learn through that. Now, ego is the complete opposite of that. It is being fed through the filters of life, having people telling you you're good as opposed to you believing you're good. Having and this is not to pick on social media in any way, because it's a beautiful thing.
I think
but like thinking some kind of correlation and a causation between likes and how good you are, or that people are interested in watching you or following you, does not make you more self-confident. In fact, it can make you more self-conscious, because you're like, I'm being watched. I'm now the subject of people's expectations, and so that's tough. And if your confidence doesn't meet that, man, can that be quite a tough space. So so quite simply, confidence from the ground up, ego from the top down, where you're just fed this kind of stuff. And a huge boxing fan, and in boxing you can see it so well when a certain trainer has developed the gritty fighter who's really made of something, and then the one that is the trainer sees what the fighter can be, but the fighter doesn't see it yet, or believes it. Yeah. Because there's a dark corner of their mind that they haven't cleaned out that closet yet. Yeah. Right? That's that old saying of what boxers say, when old boxing trainers say, boxing doesn't build character, it reveals it. Yep. And well, that's what that means, is that all of a sudden, parts of you that are normally darkened, that nobody can see, now have the giant searching spotlight shined on it. So we can see all the way through every dark closet inside your mind of where you've put a thought of what you feel towards yourself away.
What is that? That dark corner? Is it just uncertainty? And where does that uncertainty come from?
Yeah, I mean, it's who we are, honestly. It's like whatever function of our mind, whatever function of our feelings kind of kicks in. And this is another thing I tell my fighters, is that your brain is a protection engine. It's what it does, right? And so it tried to save you back in the day from saber-toothed tigers eating you up. Well, they're not here anymore, and we live in an age of abundance, so we don't have to worry about like food and water and certain things. So like all of a sudden, something that was probably 20th on our list, or even lower, like things like embarrassment and lack of social acceptance and things like that, now become number one. Yeah. Number two, when other things were much higher, and so your mind goes to that. And so it finds, your mind knows you better than you, and so it finds what little quirk that it can agitate you for, because your brain is only trying to make you survive. And so it's like, hey, how do I get Brandon to go produce more and make us more money so we can go and, I don't know what, feel better about ourselves through the acquisition of stuff. Well, here's the problem with that. You're pursuing something that is from the top down. It's something very egotistical as opposed to something foundational that will truly build who you are. And so now you're left with this kind of hollow feeling of pursuing something that doesn't mean that much to you. You made yourself believe that it's important to you, and so now as you're doing it for all the wrong reasons, so you find yourself kind of lacking a true drive behind it. And so, not to get too far off the subject of it, but it's hopefully I've tied it back together, but that your brain is kind of not betraying you. It's looking out for you. Yeah. But it doesn't realize that we're in the year 2019. Sure. Spoiler alert.
Wait, what? That was a good one.
For those of you, it wasn't a slightly good one. That it doesn't realize that there are no saber-toothed tigers for you to worry about. Instead, it just takes these like small slices of what it knows to agitate you, to then move you, compel you to do something that it thinks you need to do when you really don't need to do it.
Okay, so then I guess that would this is going to just deviate from what my next question was going to be, but is that uncertainty that's always like in your brain that when you step in the ring or you step into competition or whatever, I mean, there has to be a degree of validity to that, isn't there? I mean, as far as being like, you know, your trainers feel 100% confident in you, but you don't feel that confidence in yourself. There's got to be some validity to that, right? Like, you have to know in the back of your mind. Some of that probably comes from, I'm just going to throw it as an example, and maybe I'm just looking at it differently. Not doing what you need to do as far as training for your upcoming competition, fight, whatever. Or is that simply just you not building yourself up?
There's always validity to it, and it's not incorrect, but we're talking about percentages. So it's as much validity as you have being nervous in a rainstorm about getting struck by lightning. Yeah. And so, of course, there's a percentage of that happening. Yeah. There's a not a great chance, but I shouldn't say that. Here I am trying to diffuse it. But, of course, there's a chance. But we're talking a micro, infinitesimal, so hard to measure chance that you're ignoring 99.99999% of what is more likely and probable to happen, and instead focusing in on that little bit, and that can absolutely rattle people to their core in a very unhealthy way. Yeah. And so it's just finding the reality of it. Sure, trainers, and as one, I know this one, you live in that sub 1% a percentage of below 0.001%. You live in that space thinking that is there more that I can do, and so that keeps you up at night. And I've experienced that and lived that. But every time I've had a competitor either struggle or not win or something like that, it almost always was not what I thought it would be. It was something different that we were then had to learn and grow from. You know, and that's just part of it. That could happen anywhere to anyone all the time. Even the greats had those moments. Even the ones who have an undefeated record. Floyd Mayweather is a great example. He has had some near devastating moments. One was against Zab Judah, a southpaw with faster hands than him at the time, and he kind of just didn't anticipate for how much of a speed difference there was. And it
was that crazy moment.
Crazy moment, gets rocked, but then Zab loses his discipline. Fouls him. Floyd's uncle jumps in the ring. It's actually quite a crazy melee. Pretty crazy moment. But
it almost catches Zab Judah off guard.
It does. Well, not really. Zab starts turning back into Brownsville, New York, and starts trying to fight everyone climbing in the ring. It became quite a scene, and the shocking thing really was that they didn't call the fight.
They let it go.
No, keep it like no, it's all right. The fight can resume and all that stuff because you've seen fights like called off for less. Than a 20-person brawl opening up of in a ring, but so remembering those types of things is really crucial.
Is the thought of like, oh well, we didn't do enough that keeps you up at night? Is that a I mean, to be honest, is that an in hindsight situation, or is that we're walking up to this ring? I mean, shoot, it's just. Have you ever had that moment?
I think that one of the things that you're kind of touching on is that idea of like when you're going up to the ring or going up to the mat, like for me, the competition mat for jiu-jitsu, when you're walking up to the mat, the kind of the way I perceive that is that if at that moment my brain starts going, I didn't get enough reps, I didn't eat enough, I didn't drink enough water and all that stuff, well then that lets me know that, of course, like you said before, maybe there's some validity to it.
Yeah.
But I think that more likely that what you should do in that moment is try to think, okay, I need to come back to this later. And, there's a task at hand. It's time to go take care of business. We always make the joke before compete. We're like, got to go pay that rent. Yeah. We got to go out there and do work. And to me, when it's time to get to work, just like anybody, you show up to your job, and it's a very difficult thing to do sometimes, but you kind of have to leave stuff at the door when you get there. because ultimately, if you want to pay your bills, if you want to, take care of those responsibilities, you have to leave stuff at the door.
Great point.
And I think that it's important that, when you do leave work and you're done working, that you go back and reflect on that and say, okay, what was that thing that was telling me I didn't get enough reps? What was that thing that was telling me I didn't eat enough, I didn't drink enough water, all that stuff? And then, try to articulate it. Look at it from like a very practical standpoint and try not to let the emotional side of that overwhelm you. So that way, the next time you go back into that competition mindset and that thing starts creeping up on you again, it goes, okay, this is that thing coming back again. It's that insecurity. It's that thing that comes out in all of us. And I think that the difference between that idea of confidence and ego in relation to that specifically is that the ego tells me, no, I can't let them see that I'm insecure. I can't let them see that I'm afraid, because it's like a facade. It's a thing that I'm trying to show everyone.
You're a paper tiger.
Exactly. And I'm saying like, oh, I'm not scared.
Yeah.
Versus confidence, trying to expand on the situation and go, there's normal insecurity and fear coming. I know what this is, but right now I need to put it aside and go do work. I got to go pay rent. And coming back to it later.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between the confidence and the ego.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I've been very fortunate to be able to sit down with Robbie and Kevin and have these types of conversations before competition, after competition, in the middle of a competition, about the mindset aspect of it. And, just recently got the opportunity to go watch some live MMA fights with some of the, like, local guys and all that stuff. And I was watching the fights and, of course, huge fight fan and watching all that stuff and love it.
These boys can get these hands.
I think everyone does that. The guy in the third row at every UFC event is like, put me in, coach.
I could stand up against Khabib. You know what? Yeah.
No, yeah, but one of
4 Budweisers in. I got this.
One of those things that happened when I was watching it was I was just like, this has so little to do with what they're physically doing in that cage and so much more to do with where they are up here mentally with their mindset and that confidence and that ego portion that we're talking about. And you see it a lot of times where there are guys who, and there's like every little thing on that spectrum of guys who are out there and they're showboating and they're jumping up and down and they're yelling and all that stuff. Some of those guys are out there and they didn't train. No. Their camp didn't go as well as it should have, all that stuff, and they're trying to let everybody know, I'm good. There's nothing to worry about. There's guys who also do that exact same thing, yelling, getting hyped up and all that stuff, and it's because they're excited. They're confident in the work that they put in and all that stuff. And so, it's kind of hard to, from the outside looking in, look at other people and decide, well, which one is that person dealing with at the moment? So I think that it's really good that we're talking about it from the perspective of confidence versus self-confidence.
Right.
That idea of like what is going through your head at that moment and trying to be able to compartmentalize it and go, all right, put this aside, come back to it, all that good stuff.
Yeah. To kind of to piggyback on what you were saying, that one of the key pillars of self-confidence, and I had this written down earlier, I wanted to put it in there, but this is a better time to bring it up, and I think it's what Brandon touched on many times, is that a big part of self-confidence and confidence in general is self-awareness. You have to be self-aware inside of it of who and what you are and what you're doing this for and how to overcome it. Like we talked about, those small portions of a percentage of things that may happen, and really being aware of them, acknowledging them, but at the same time not giving them the weight that they don't deserve. I mean, you would never look at a mountain of rubble that needs to get moved and only stare at one little rock that's like, man, that one's going to be a tough one when I get to it. It's like, whoa.
That's awesome, actually.
The thing is, and it's natural. It's how our brains work. And, Coach Travis is really great about bringing this point up. He talks about it during our instructor courses, that for whatever reason, 98% of our life can be so great. I mean, literally paved in gold, and yet all we do is focus on that 2% of like, well, why did that person say this about me? I'm like, well, they're a jerk and they have nothing else going on but to throw a comment out or
Yeah.
whatever. It's just it has so little to do with you, even though you are the subject of what they're saying. You can't allow that to rattle you and have anything to do with you. It's always a reflection on who's speaking it than what they're speaking on, more than anything that's really being said. But being self-aware, like you mentioned, walking up to the mat, having these conversations, knowing that maybe I'm ready, maybe there's some more things I could have done, but I feel like I did my best with what I had each and every time. That an opportunity to give my best, I gave as much as I could. And is that my 100% best every single time? No, but is the best I had at the time I could expend it.
We might go back and forth on this one a little bit. But when you talk about being self-aware, you know, in my opinion, you have to be critical of yourself, right? I mean,
I agree.
Right, and so don't you need to be kind of your own? Because I know myself better than some other people know me. Don't you need to be your own worst critic to like find those improvements or to get yourself back on track?
Yeah. So I do believe there's room for criticism and self-criticism, but I don't feel like you being your own worst critic is a good thing. I actually think that only a certain level of criticism is really acceptable. Everything else is kind of in your way. And it's like loading up a backpack with everything that you've ever said negative about yourself and then carrying it all the way from the day of your birth to where you are now.
Yeah.
And you are now carrying this massive just overweight thing on your back that's hunching you over, not allowing you to open up and, stick your chest out and be proud of who you are and what you're doing. And it really has this overall negative effect on your pursuit of whatever it is you're doing. We're obviously we're martial artists and it's what we're talking about, but just in anything, if you carry all those items with you, it can be so devastating to your growth. And definitely it always does the dry erase board wipe of confidence anytime it builds. And it's such a tough thing because criticism is natural and you have to find the balance point of like how to take criticism without taking it personal. And you got to learn how to not personalize your own criticisms because some of them are self-created.
Yeah.
And they're not real. They're really just you finding a reason to, self-sabotage or, maybe bear some lack of contentment in what you're doing. Like, I'm not fully happy in doing it this one. And maybe understanding, maybe this is me telling myself I don't want to do this as much as I thought I wanted to do it. Maybe I just want to do this as a hobbyist, and that's okay. I don't need to be the absolute best at this the way someone who's fanatical about training to be a world champion, whatever, or just someone who wants to be at it. And there's a space for you too. But that self-criticism thing will still rear its ugly head, even if you're a hobbyist, unless you find some sort of healthy balance with it.
What is a healthy balance? I mean, what is criticism that I should and shouldn't take? If there's an example. Like, your legs are too big today, son. Like,
Yeah. True. Very true. But I think we all know it to be true that. So there's a few things that come to mind. So I think we know that we always have more to give. We may not think that we have more to give, but there is actually more to give one way or the other, or even changing up the methodology of how we're training to satisfy that. And so, in jiu-jitsu, flow rolling to get yourself more comfortable in this bad position. In Muay Thai, it might be, slowing down. It's very addictive in Muay Thai to crack the pads as hard as you physically can every time, and there's a space for that. That's like the conditioning aspect of it. But what about the technical side? So that you make sure you wrap your shin around every kick, that you make sure you're on the ball of your foot every time, and that's sometimes slowing down, taking a step back, and not feeling like such a savage about how you're doing it. Those types of things are good ways to do it without being critical, overly judging, overly putting some weight in the wrong place towards what you're doing. Another thing is judging. I shouldn't say it that way, but like, stop criticizing something that you might not know as much as you think you know about. For example, training martial arts. You are hopefully learning with a well-trained, good instructor, somebody who's showing you the ropes, and when they're quietly nodding and watching you fail over and over, you have to know first, and this is just someone who's been in that position, it kills me to see you repeat a mistake over and over, but I also understand that you have to go through it till you learn the lesson. If not, you will never get better. And worse than that, I can fix it for you, but you'll never learn how to fish. You'll never know what it is like to have confidence, where you think you have confidence. Well, I got out of this guillotine every single time. Well, how did you get out of it every single time? Robbie told me, or Brandon told me, Nabil told me how to get out of it, but you didn't earn how to get out of it, so you don't know about it, right? It's like children and the value of money. You don't fault them for not knowing it, and you know that they won't fully understand it. But at the same time, they have to learn that at some point, or what are they going to be? So trusting on the expertise of maybe who you're also going against, not measuring yourself against it, because that's tough. You're taking a person that or people that are really devoted into the full technical aspect of it, a technician in its truest terms. And so judging yourself against it can be so tough, and really takes away. In our last podcast, we talked about the process. And one thing I also want to mention there is finding enjoyment inside that process. Well, that joy can be zapped out with the lack of confidence thing, and trying to measure it in the wrong ways, and what you think you should be at. Well, I saw this person on TV, again in the montage, doing this amazing thing, and I can't even come close to it in any way. It's like, well, I hate to say it, but whatever made you think you could to begin with? That took years. There's a reason that you're seeing them in that place, and there's a reason why you envy them and not, someone who's, random person on Instagram. Because there's enviable qualities in that person on Instagram in that way, but that person above that, that's who you're looking at. And so that can really rattle and shake confidence, and develop this thing of where you're overcooking the idea so much.
So I'm going to ask another question. So, I feel like for me personally, like on my own track, I feel like confidence has always been the thing I've fought against my entire life as far as athleticism goes, right? And so my thing that I genuinely fear is, I'm doing so well and I feel great about everything that's going on, and then somehow it just teeters off for whatever reason. And I have to believe that I'm not the only person that experiences that, right? So
you are.
Crazy.
I'll give you some lack of confidence. You have you had that in the memory bank? But remember that moment. You are.
To have a brother.
1 in 7 billion.
These mics have a filter. He doesn't. No, man. It just like,
I'm kidding.
It comes and goes, and they know you're serious. It comes and goes in these crazy waves where it'll be 4 or 5 years in, and I'm doing whatever, and then suddenly it's just like everything feels so clunky, and I feel like such a rusted robot. And then there'll be situations like recently where I took a year off of training. I took a year and a half off, and I'm back, and I feel amazing. Like, I'm like, there isn't anything that's being taught to me, presented to me, that I'm just like, this is easy peasy. So how do you get back on that track?
So if I could, I think that
what
you're talking about is a question that I hear people asking a lot whenever they talk about like plateauing, and whenever they find themselves in it's not the exact same thing, but like a similar situation where you're in the middle of it and you're training hard, and it's not that you're not showing up and being consistent, or whatever it is, even if it's not training, trying to get better at something, we all have those moments where we find a lull in our progress. And, sometimes a lull can, to me, it can mean a couple different things. Maybe you're too close to it is my thing. And I think that just like I use this analogy a lot. If I'm standing an inch away from a wall and I'm looking at it, it's kind of hard to tell what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to take a few steps away to like really be able to appreciate, oh, okay, I'm looking at a wall.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so if you take that same, mentality and apply it to, the training and all that stuff, the reason why I think that this is so great is that, I've heard Coach Kevin give this same advice where he says, if you feel like you're having one of those moments in jiu-jitsu where you're starting to hit a little bit of that plateau or lull and I'm just not feeling that progression that I had, it's okay to take a week and go, you know what, maybe I should focus a little bit more of my attention on Muay Thai this week. Or maybe I should take the time to go, well, what have I been working on in jiu-jitsu? I've been trying to get better at my closed guard for this whole week, and I've been disciplined about it, and it's right in front of my face, and it's all I can think about. Well, how about you just go grab someone you've never rolled with and just think, you know what, I'm just going to have a fun round. And instead of focusing all your, attention and time and effort on, I have to get better at this, that's the only option I have, just go out there with a different mentality. It doesn't even have to be, it doesn't have to be anything specific. It can literally just be different. And then you never know, you might be in those situations where, you know what, I'm going to go grab that, 3-stripe white belt that I've never rolled with. And you're rolling with them and they do something that, you both go, oh, wow, this is that thing that I've been trying to fix. This is that thing that I've been looking for to find that progression. And, whenever we're talking about confidence and how it comes and it goes and all that stuff, I think that's most things. Just like, getting in shape for a competition. Mm-hmm. You can't maintain that same level of intensity all the time because you would just wear away at your body. Injuries and stress and all that stuff that would come from it. Yeah. It's that same mentality up here. You can't constantly always be at like a 10 with confidence. Mm-hmm. Because then, what are you progressing towards? What are you working towards? And all that stuff. And so I think that that's a really important thing, especially for folks that are getting good at stuff. Whenever you start finding that moment where you're like, man, I'm great at this thing, and you can say that, well, you need to go do something that you're not great at to keep you, humble and keep you constantly wanting to learn and progress in that way, because just like anything, confidence comes and it goes, and ultimately it's about trying to make sure, just like I've heard Coach Robbie say, we're kind of all having the volatility of the ups and downs of our training. You just want to make sure that volatility is on an upward
Let me ask
direction.
You, is that thing that you're great at and trying to find, just saying, oh, I'm so amazing at this, is that an ego versus confidence situation right there? Like, I'm just boosting my own ego by just doing the same amazing armbar that I can do.
100%. And what ends up happening with that, to me, is like, if you have a game that you're really good at, and or you have something that you're just really strong with, and that's all you focus on, it's giving you a false sense of confidence, saying that, oh man, I can tap anybody with that armbar. Yeah. I can get anybody with that takedown. I can catch anybody with that combination. There is someone out there,
that will counter.
Even if you were the greatest ever, that will find a way to make that not happen.
Yeah.
And then at that moment is whenever all of that confidence in that one thing will then show the lack of confidence in all those others. And Coach Robbie's talked to me about this a million times, about technique specifically, and trying to not be, completely one-dimensional with one thing, whether it be in your jiu-jitsu or in just martial arts in general. Trying to have a well-balanced game is not easy, because we all naturally have body types, and we all naturally have things that were strengths and weaknesses. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Some of us are blessed, like Nabil. But, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with playing to your strengths. But to me, the way I look at that, kind of going back to the competition thing, is that if you go out there to that competition and your mentality is, man, I'm going to catch everybody with that armbar that I'm really good at, you're not going to... You
won't even get one chance.
You won't even get an opportunity to look at that armbar from the mat over. Like, it's not going to be there for you.
No.
If your mindset is, I'm going to go do my very best, and hope for the best outcome and push, forth my best effort, you might find yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
But you just have to be, mentally prepared for the moment that it doesn't happen, and make sure that you have something to fall back on. That's that foundation that Robbie was talking about before, from the ground up. Because if you put up the facade, oh, I'm gonna go out there and I've got this armbar, man. You just wait and see whenever I get to it, dude. If that's not there, everybody's gonna be like, well, where'd the facade go? Where'd the rest of it go?
I guess not to deviate so much from the question, but something that, like, when I was younger, in regards to why don't you try something out that's different in your game plan. I used to like really love like doing head kicks. I mean, it wasn't something that I would like try to devastate somebody with, but it was something that I worked on that I think I got pretty decent at until Robbie, would handicap me. No, you're not going to do that anymore. Whenever we'd spar, whenever we do anything, don't do it. That's the last thing I want you to do. And I mean, listen, I was young and, just full of like, oh, I just want to get amazing at this. And I think that was more of my own ego that was getting in the way of my coach telling me, no, you need to work on something different, because everybody can see something like that coming from a mile away. It's just like, cool, it's great, not everybody is crow cop. And so
What? I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry. But it was one of those things where, Coach Robbie just like, it's one where you need to trust in your trainer, when you need to trust in your coach, where it's like you need to develop other aspects other than this one armbar, this one thing. So that is something that I always strive for is, well, what am I not good at in my stand-up game? Because no stand-up game is ever perfect. I mean, despite the records that you see in boxing, MMA, kickboxing, holy God, I put the sound off on that, I swear to God. Despite like what you see as far as what's on paper, it's not true. There's always something that can be worked on. There's always something that you're not good at, and that's just basically because of your body frame, or just how your makeup is, whatever.
Yeah.
So
your fight strategy,
your
approach. I mean, all that stuff can vary so much, and I think that's the other side of people being critical about what they always look at what they can't do instead of what they can do. And I mean, it all falls into that same thing while you're trying to expand what you can do within that. And I know I'm kind of taking over for just a second.
Yeah, no, it's meant to be, yeah.
But it's the can do and expanding that.
Yes.
Because no matter how expertise you think you are on something, there's still a universe left over.
Oh yeah.
Still of anything.
To get back to your thoughts on it, how do you get back on track of having confidence once you lose it? Inevitably, everybody is. Even black belts.
Absolutely.
I'm almost positive. It's just like I'm not feeling it, man.
As a black belt, no, not at all.
Okay, I
No, just kidding. You're 100% right, and it happens to everyone because we're human beings, and yeah, we all feel that lack of confidence, and we all get shaken and rattled, and our core kind of like crumbled a little bit. But if that foundation is true, you're still there. You're still not far away, and you've done it before.
Yeah.
And that feeling of having done this so many times before, so what I mentioned earlier about experience, well, that's what that experience is for, to remind you that you can do this, that you have overcome this. Maybe not this exact thing, but anything close enough is perfect. Heck, we could talk about something from jiu-jitsu to MMA, and it still would work the same way, because I've endured this through this. I can definitely do it in this other field, in this other aspect. So it's totally a part of it. So your experience builds that, but it has to be a real experience, not the I don't know of a great way of describing it, but just like that you just went through the motions well enough at something that you were kind of okay at to begin with, or something that naturally spoke to you, so you never really had to develop it. So in that, you really had to push and drive to learn it truly, then that sticks with you long term. It's the toughest types of experiences that stick with you. The best lessons there are the ones with colossal failures in them. And heck, even if you look from a narrative perspective, our favorite stories are wrapped around failure. And so we can't be afraid of failure. It's why, we'll talk about it later, like my book recommendation, it talks about how toxic a perfectionist mindset is. Because, like, you have nothing to grow from, nothing to catapult off of. You're talking about, how do I gain momentum in a zero gravity space? It's like, I don't know how you would. That doesn't happen. Those two things are exclusive to each other, and so you have to have something to bounce off of it. And we'll talk about it. We'll save it for another podcast later on. But I'd love to discuss my favorite failures and how they were my propulsion into what we're successful about. Here's just a little snippet into it. The success of the Academy, based on, I had a business before the Academy opened, and it was a colossal failure. And it wasn't even one that took years to manifest. It took months for me to fail so miserably at it and be left in both financial ruin, confidence ruin. I mean, it was a bunch of stuff. So I can't wait to share that story with everyone and show them that the success of what Team Rabadi is and what people always get to see, it came from a place of not zero, but negative 200.
Right.
You know,
it's also one of those things that show that no matter how quickly you, or how long it takes you to build something, it can unravel in moments, and then it shows you what you really are. How do you respond to that sudden impact?
Great point.
Which is also another thing. Like, I'm a huge perfectionist. That is the battle that I have with myself.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah.
It's like just letting it go.
Yep.
And just being present.
Yes. And not carrying that baggage with you.
Exactly.
Because it comes with expectations.
Yes.
Well, I need to get it right the first time, or at least the second time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, for who or what?
Yes.
Who set that parameter? Who put that out there? Where does that come from? And it's one of those that
It's a race against nothing.
And it's nothing. But it's also that thing of experience and realizing, well, maybe I'll have a good chance of being okay at this, but then there's a good chance that I won't be.
Sure.
Because there's the other side of it. One of the Brandon, this is one of my favorite ones that I hear in class all the time, especially in jiu-jitsu, is that, oh, coach, I'm over here butchering the technique. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're doing it 93% right.
Yeah.
You're just, one of your feet is out of the wrong place. And so, of course, imagine if I took one of the wheels off of a car and put it inside the car, how much a difference that would make. Well, okay, well, now now it moves much better.
I think it's
and so there's the two sides of it. It's like, no, just keep it in balance. Like, I think I'm getting it right.
I think
I'm close.
An
I don't know what I'm
interesting
missing.
thing about what you said about the car analogy is that it's hard for folks to look at it that way, and I think that's why sometimes I get a little bit of crap for stop being so arrogant, Brandon.
Yeah.
But it's like, my perspective has always been, if the car's not running properly, if there's something wrong with it, it's like 9 times out of 10, if you've ever worked on a car or find something that you like that's not working, whenever you find out what it is that's messed up and you fix it, you go, oh, that was it?
That was it.
And it's like, if you can go into it thinking like, man, when I find this thing, it's going to be something so small and
The
stupid.
transmission's out.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh, wait, one spark plug.
Yeah, exactly. It's all kind of about that perspective and having that, like, like you said before, those expectations of it. It's like,
For what?
For what? Yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah. If you were already an expert at it, then what are you working on?
Exactly.
So there's no reason to raise that pressure, that feeling. Instead, you root it in past experience, self-awareness, and then an understanding that you are constantly trying to improve on it, even on a smaller percentage scale.
Yeah.
And it just makes it so much easier.
So, you heard the buzzard earlier. We're well past the round. We're still fighting. Which that athletic commission is going bananas right now. Which brings us again to our final thoughts. And if you listen to our previous podcast, that is metaphor number 2 on a car. So hopefully we can keep that trend going.
Oh yeah. See. Pressure. Oh my God.
that expectation.
We didn't even talk about laundry once this time. Dang it.
Oh man,
It's called growth, baby.
I haven't done mine in.
Well, wait,
3
did you-
months.
Yeah. That's unsanitary.
Are you
I think
okay?
there's some bacteria. Oh yeah, I feel great. I feel better than ever.
Wow.
I'm taking the Bradley Cooper approach and just not showering. So I apologize about the smell. Man. Also, so final thoughts here. I was going to jump into something, then I realized, you know what? I'll hold it for another podcast. And so I just want to ask, shoot it to you, any final thoughts in regards to the subject at hand?
I think just kind of to be the most decisive about how to say it is just judge yourself less, get more experiences, and make sure you're being true to those experiences. You're not going through the motions. You're really, really giving some content to it. It's a part of you inside of you is a part of you from the inside is being given to whatever you're pursuing. And judge yourself less. Like, you're going through the process. Hey, and here's a great real-time thing is that all I've done is judge how we're doing on these podcasts and overthinking and what to do and what to be. And what do we watch? We watch we watch like the top end best ones, and we're like, hey, I want to be like this one. I want to be like that one. I want to be a stand-up comedian and be Dave Chappelle on day one. It's like, no, you don't pick up a basketball and just like, well, I'm Michael Jordan. And
Kobe.
That's it. Kobe. That's it. And that's, how has that ever worked that way? So why is that different for you?
Right.
And chill out. Just literally calm down, right? And just let it simmer. Move away from it, and don't personalize it, but definitely don't judge it, and let that confidence kind of grow naturally through your production of doing it, experience in it. Fall on your face, knock out your front 2 teeth. It's kind of part of it. You're going to be a little embarrassed. I don't mean
wear a mouthpiece.
no.
Wear a mouthpiece.
I didn't mean it actually.
Metaphorically, knock out your front teeth.
Yes,
I know what you mean.
But yeah, that's it. And really take the judgment out, take the criticism out, take the dialogue out of your brain, for goodness sakes. Your brain does not know what's best for you all the time.
It doesn't know how to shut up sometimes.
It really doesn't know how to shut up sometimes, or it would let you go to bed at a decent hour all the time, right? So you're going to listen to that guy or gal, You're going to listen to that person now on this advice? No, don't do it. Don't do it. Moderate that thing. It's a protection machine. It's just trying to protect you. And just know it is. It's just like our dear sweet mother who tries to protect us all the time. Yep. And literally, this is true fact about our mom. She's just worried that, I don't know, either something between the bubonic plague or a dragon is going to eat us the second we step out of the door.
Once it hits 60 degrees, my mom and dad are immediately on the jacket train. It's cold outside. You're going to catch a flu. It's the Oregon Trail out there.
The Oregon Trail.
It's so accurate. But yeah. So, yeah. Quiet that brain.
Sure.
Follow your passion, your desire, but fuel it behind a confidence in that. Even if your confidence is something as simple as like, well, I'm going to be consistent doing this. And that's a starting point.
Absolutely. Brian?
I'd say
everything Robbie just said.
Everything Robbie said,
but better.
I'm going to reframe it in a better way and steal
In a
it.
more confident way?
Speaking of self-confidence.
One up yet again.
No, just to kind of wrap up my whole idea on this thing, I think that if you are struggling with, like, what are the individual steps I should take to develop self-confidence, go back and listen to the first podcast where we talked about the being, embracing the process, all the little things, stick to the fundamentals because that's how you develop your foundation. Do reps. That's what Robbie's saying when he's saying to go get that experience. Go out there and do it. Go out there and try it. Practice it a lot. The more you do that, the better it'll be when it comes to fundamentals. And then when that flashy armbar that you've been hitting on everybody doesn't work in that competition, you'll have your fundamentals to fall back on. That's all. Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Just sum up, confidence isn't a day one thing. It's
Nope.
something that you build. But what you can do day one is take that expectation off your shoulders. Don't put that pressure on yourself.
Yep.
That's it.
So good.
Before we wrap that up, I was just gonna say, and interrupt if you have another thought, please.
Yes, I only want to, just so I don't forget. I mentioned, and we said I don't know if we were going to do it all the time, but a book recommendation.
That I was going to ask you that.
Just really specifically to the conversation. This one isn't about self-confidence, but it is also about kind of quieting your mind. And I've recommended it before on social media and when we had our book club and stuff like that. But it's a great book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, Dweck, and it's an amazing book on how to break down and understand like the perfectionist mindset and what our brain does and how to look at things and how to be in a growth mindset and kind of to focus on that over everything else. So check that book out. It's not really in this vein of self-confidence, but it kind of all is, right? Sure. Everything is all connected in that way. So I just wanted to throw that one out there. I've recommended it before, but it's an amazing book.
Next podcast is going to be about how Robbie's going to let me ask the question first before he just goes off on the book recommendation, because that's what I was going to ask, man.
Wait till the opening credits are done. Hey, welcome to the Coach's Corner. Green Eggs and Ham. That's my book. Not ready for that? Are we done?
Confidence builder. It's delicious.
I didn't have confidence that you would finish out.
The next podcast is going to be on trusting. The trust process. I don't have
where the red fern grows.
I don't have a personal recommendation. Brandon, do you have anything?
Nothing related to anything we just talked about, of course. But if you haven't yet seen The Mandalorian, go get that 7-day free trial of Disney Plus and watch it, because it's so good.
But you got to wait till the Mandalorian's over, because
it's
so good.
So wait 6 more weeks.
8 episodes.
8? Oh, 4 more weeks.
Yeah, so 4.
I think so. Yeah.
4 more.
That makes me really sad.
I know.
Oh man!
It also, just putting this out there, the last episode I think comes out after the new Star Wars movie comes out.
Oh,
so I'm pretty sure
that's a bit of a spoiler.
Spoiler alert!
Spoiler!
There's a new Star Wars movie coming out.
When did they start that again?
From the 70s?
George Lucas has got to be doing this one, right? Can't be anybody other than Fox working on this, right?
Wow, we landed on the moon.
Yeah. Well, outside of that goofiness, we definitely want to thank you guys for joining us on this podcast. I just want to say, keep training hard. Love the process. Thank you guys for listening again.
Bye.
Until next time.